You know, I don't normally use Fox, but in this case, this is exactly what I thought when I saw this. Literally, it was the words out of my mouth. Imagine if the previous administrator had said this, I don't care if they have the right or not, they should have just taken the guns and then worried about due process later. If this kid, and I know hindsight's always 2020, but think about this. If this kid hadn't done anything, hadn't committed one crime, and had just put up some pictures online of him holding all the pictures we saw, and even if they had found that 6 months earlier he had made one offhand comment on a YouTube video saying, I'm going to be a professional school shooter, and that's all you had to go on, would you have said, oh yeah, we need to take all this kid's guns? If anybody had done that, YouTube would have lost its mind. Would have absolutely lost his mind if someone would have suggested that. And I don't normally agree with Tucker Carlson, but he nailed it. Imagine if the previous administration had said this, or if the person who ran for the Democratic nomination this year had won and said or done this. It would have been literally the end of the world here on YouTube, I promise you. And they're confused. I mean, they're absolutely confused about all this, but they shouldn't be. I mean, if they look back at the man's history, they'll see. Now, this is how things, and to segue here, get handled in South America. They have a whole different take on guns down there. You know, you might call them leftist and you might call them socialist and all this kind of thing, but they don't have any particular amendment down there that says any particular Colombian or Venezuelan citizen has a right to a gun. In fact, I think Venezuela has exactly the opposite, yet they have a proliferation down there of heavy-duty machinery. It's not hard. And there's no amendment protecting anything. And this is this guy talking about how he's afraid of what happens if Timoshenko gets in power, or the Colombian equivalent. And this was his quote. This is how they fix politics down there. This is how they do things. And I'm telling you, you're going to see that little acronym more and more pop up. The ELN. The ELN and the FARC. The ELN is just the extreme left-wing militant version of the FARC, and the FARC was pretty damn militant. They're nobody to mess with. And this is the guy running in Colombia. This guy, Rodrigo Londoño, he was the head of the FARC. He was a terrorist's terrorist down there for a long time. And he has a real good shot at winning. He really does. There's a lot of people running. All sorts of things could happen down there. And these elections are coming up. There's going to be kind of this little lull in March and probably the first part of April. And you're going to see some odd attacks here and there, and you're going to see some different events happen. But when the elections happen, right before, and it's April in Venezuela, it's May in Mexico and Colombia. Depending on who wins, all hell is going to break loose. And if who I think is going to win, it's going to be really, really bad. Because we have this other article here. Because this whole thing with the sanctions down there and causing all of the grief and all of the problem and all of the angst, you know, people not being able to feed their kids and people not being able just to do the very basic things you knew to get through the day. This changes people. It changes normal, everyday, middle-class folks that were just like you and me. And I said this before in a comment to a person on one of my videos. I could go through the United States and I could show you America, in giant quotes there, based on what I see in neighborhoods in LA, East St. Louis, Dallas, Chicago, Detroit, parts of New York, Philadelphia, Miami, Atlanta, and you would think we were living in a slum. You would think that America, from the West Coast to the East Coast to the North to the South, was just nothing but overrun slums of dangerous drug addicts, and if that's the picture I wanted to paint, I could. And this is what's happened in Latin America and South America. That all America has seen is MS-13 and the drug war in Colombia. They don't see the middle-class average Venezuelan, middle-class average Colombian that are just like you and me. They raise their kids. They have the same worries you and I do. They go to church. They go to the store. And they wonder about the future, and they wonder about their leaders, and they work real jobs and collect paychecks and, you know, wish they had more. It's, the reason I had that graphic up was right there. That's when the real heavy-duty sanctions started on Venezuela. And that's what caused this massive increase in potential cocaine. Because people didn't have any other choice. See, that's why I call them these fool's errand sanctions down there. All you're going to do, when you make life hard for people, they're going to find a way. People are resourceful to make money. And if it means illegal activities, then it's going to be illegal activities. You would too. You wouldn't care about what Rome said, or the U.S. government said about the legality of what you were doing. If you couldn't feed your family, you'd feed your family. It's what they do. And after the ambassador to Panama steps down, what, a month or two ago, now we have this. Because they see this myopic blind spot, this attitude from on high here that does not have any concept of what's going on down there. Chevron and Shell just found an enormous whale of a oil reserve down in Mexico. And these people going forward in the next 10 to 20 years are going to be a world player in oil and gas production. And we are alienating these people, and we are making enemies down there, and our enemies are taking advantage of this in ways that it's going to hurt America like nobody's business. This woman did her job well and did it quietly and did the very best that she could. But even she's realizing now that if things continue the way they are, the U.S. is going to have a problem. We now have enemies to the north. Well, maybe not enemies, but they don't trust us for sure. Europe doesn't trust us. Asia thinks we're a bunch of idiots because of that report on the Fitzgerald. Latin America. I mean, Nikki Haley went to Latin America to say thank you for backing us on the move of the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. And it sent riots through the street. Not because of the Jerusalem thing, because she was just a U.S. official in their country. That's how much they don't like us. Now, it never used to be that way. They never really thought we were the greatest, but in the last year or two, we have allowed perceptions down there to get out of hand. We really have. And I found it interesting yesterday. I cut the video off right as Donald Trump was throwing the table to Marco Rubio. So at his little round table where he said that it's perfectly fine to take people's guns first if a cop on the scene just makes the spitball assessment that someone is mentally ill, it's okay to just go ahead and take the guns, and then we'll do the due process later. In that round table, he had Cornyn on one hand, Weinstein on the other, and then down the table he had quote-unquote little Marco. But he had there because I think he realizes, like, crap, this was right down the road from Mar-a-Lago, and, you know, who knows, some crazy gun owner is going to come up and shoot me one day. I honestly think that was what he was thinking. Because this kid, he had some run-ins with the law, but nothing huge. At least not to that point. And he's saying that's all you need is just the suspicion that you might be a danger. And here's the philosophical point that I think people are failing to understand with this Second Amendment right. If you are of the opinion that the Second Amendment is there to keep the government in check, then by that very definition, you are a danger. Because you are saying, I am maintaining this weapon so that if this government becomes tyrannical, in my opinion, or the opinion of the groups of people around me that I'm associated with, that we will take up arms against them. Second Amendment wasn't about personal protection. It was about security of a free state against tyranny. That very statement alone would then, by the current administrator's definition, make you a threat and give them license to take your weapon away. By just stating that, you could have your weapon taken away now, according to the current administrator. So, I'll leave it there. And the reason this dovetails with this is because down here, folks, they don't have a Second Amendment down here in these countries, yet there are guns everywhere. So this argument that they take away the Second Amendment, take away the guns, it's baloney. It's absolutely baloney. South America, Central America, Latin America, all of them, it's guns everywhere. Not hard to find. Killing people for decades and decades and decades with heavy machinery. All day long, every day. So, anyway, have a good weekend. Be safe, like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.